Jamuna Tira Banachari. And you're all sitting here on the very soft sands of Jamuna. Is it nice? And Krishna has made some clouds come, so there's no hot sun on your heads either. So this very beautiful place is called Chir-ghat. But before we explain about this place, there was another place we just missed. There was one small village here. That is called Akshay-bhat. You know, Akshay. Shai means to diminish. And Akshay means always increasing, eternal. So there's one banyan tree there that's eternal. And that place is known as Akshay-bhat. And that banyan tree used to be so big, now it's Kali Yuga, he shrank. But he was so big, his branches used to go right across the Jamuna to the other side. And you see how the banyan trees, they always have roots, so the cowherd boys, they would climb up one root, they would run across to the other side, and then they would shimmy down on the other side of the Jamuna. And sometimes they would climb up in the banyan tree and grab on one of the roots and just swing out over the Jamuna and splash into the Jamuna. And meanwhile they would hang all their lunch bags in the tree while they were playing in the Jamuna and herding the cows. So after playing in the Jamuna, I'm sure anywhere you've gone bathing, then you found out after you were bathing, then you became very, very hungry. So after they were playing for some time, they all came to that Akshay-bhat. And they all sat in circles all around Sri Nandanandan. First there was 8, the 8 Gopis. Then there was another 16. Then there was 32. Then 64. Then 128. Then 256. Then 512. And after a while there was megabytes and megabytes of Gopis all sitting around Krishna, who was like the center of the whirl of a lotus flower. And everybody had his little lunch bag. And everybody was just staring at the beautiful face of Sri Nandananda. And although there was millions and millions of cowherd boys, all sitting in circles around Krishna, everybody saw that Krishna was looking at him and nobody else. Even those ones who were behind, they saw Krishna's smiling face, seeing them and no one else. And this particular forest was known as the Munjatavi. You see all the tall grass? I forgot to point out to you earlier that you've all come here in Braj, in Kartik. So Krishna has put all these beautiful white welcome flags on the sides of the road for you. You've seen them? Huh? All these beautiful, on both sides of the road, beautiful white welcome flags. Swagat Janda, because you came here in Braj and Kartik, along with Romapada Maharaj. So, Swagat Janda. Janda's flag. So there was one demon that Kamsa sent. His name was Vyomasura. Vyomasura means he could fly in the sky. He saw Krishna and the cows were all sitting, all the cowherd boys were sitting around, the cows were grazing nearby, and there's all this tall, dry grass we call Munja. This forest was called Munjatavi, a sub-forest of the Ichikitavi forest. So that Vyomasura, he took advantage, he set that grass on fire. Now you know what happens when dry grass burns. Big tall flames began licking into the sky. All the cows, because they were farther out, the Gopis were all in close by. All the cows began to cry. And the cowherd boys looked up and they saw these big tall flames and smoke. Just hearing about it, the buffaloes became frightened. And everybody looked at Krishna to save them because these flames were just burning. There was no way out. Everybody was suffering. And there's lots to be learned from this. Because go not only means cow, it means senses. So, sometimes our senses are going after newer and newer sense objects. And we keep going and going and going, and suddenly we found we've forgotten all about, we began to dovetail. We started out dovetailing our desires with Krishna. But we became so absorbed in the sense gratification that we forgot about Krishna and we're lost in the blazing fire of material existence. Because the material world, it looks so attractive. Just like one time, many years ago, way back in the beginning of our movement when our temple in Berkeley was on Telegraph Avenue, I think that's where it was. There was somebody's appearance day, so it was half-day fast. For us young brahmacharis, that was a frightening thing. Half-day, will we survive? Half-day fast. Somehow we managed to survive. Everybody went to the 12 o'clock artik and chanted very enthusiastically. As soon as the conch shell blew, everybody ran to the prasadam hall. They all sat down in lines, eagerly awaiting. Even before the pots were coming, already they were chanting, Mahaprasadi Govinde, Namabrahmani Vaishnavi. And this was long time ago, before it was illegal, that pujaris, they had made nice chocolate cake with thick chocolate icing on top. Anyway, Sridhar Swami told me, he said, I didn't vote for that one. He went back to Godhead. So anyway, everybody saw that chocolate cake with thick, creamy chocolate icing on top. The brahmacharis, their sikhs, were standing on end. Nobody could wait till the prayer was over. They're all waiting. Jai Mai, Jai Tai, Mahaprasad Ki Jai! And everybody grabbed that cake. But unfortunately, the neophyte cooks put salt instead of sugar. But then everybody took a look. It looked so nice. Well, maybe by fasting half a day, something happened with our taste buds. So they tried a second bite. Some even tried third time. So like that, material existence, it looks so attractive, you know. And we keep trying to enjoy and we only end up frustrated. So like that, the cows were going after greener and greener grass, but suddenly they found themselves separated from Krishna and in a big forest fire. So then everybody, the cows, cowherd boys, everybody looked toward Krishna. So then, he told everybody to close their eyes. Now the cowherd boys, they thought, well, Krishna's going to chant some special mantra, so it's not proper if we look. So we better close our eyes, everybody. All the cowherd boys were thinking like that. But Krishna, he was thinking, well, there at Vrndavan, All he did was eat a little bit of clay, and Mother Yasoda got so upset. What if she hears that I ate fire? Then what's going to happen? I'll get in real trouble. So he told all the copper boys to close your eyes. So everybody closed their eyes, and Krishna, he swallowed up that whole forest fire. And when he told everyone to open up their eyes, everybody was sitting around in circles, eating their lunch just like before. The cows were grazing in the fields just like before. Everything was just like before, as if there had been no fire. It was Vyomasura because he was blowing wind. That's also one part we forgot. He goes in the sky, so he was blowing, when a forest fire, dry grass fire, just like in California now, so many grass fires are going on. The wind, the Santa Ana wind is blowing, The Vyomasura was making the wind blow, so it was very frightening. But suddenly everybody found they're just sitting just like before. One day, if we execute our devotional service very nicely, chanting our rounds, attending Mangalarti, reading Prabhupada's books, one day we'll also wake up and see this whole blazing fire of material existence disappear. And we'll be sitting at the lotus feet of Krishna, taking our lunch with him in the forest. So just a little ways down, you see this red flag. This is called Tapovan. And it's very much connected with this place. Because this place is called Chir-ghat. So I'm going to ask HH Romapada Maharaj to please tell us all about this pastime that happened here at Chir-ghat.
Tapovan is the place where the Gopis were engaged in worship of Katyayani Devi. As we came in this stone structure, there's a mural on the wall that shows the pastime of Krishna sitting in this tree. And inviting the Gopis to come take their garments. That's the pastime. So at Tapovan, the tapa, or the austerities of the Gopis, was going on for one whole month. With their own hands, they fashioned a murti of Katyayani. And the goddess Katyayani was worshipped by each and every one of the Gopis for the same purpose of having Krishna as their husband. Now, one might wonder, why would someone like the Gopis in pure devotion for Krishna worship anyone other than Krishna? Why would they worship a demigod or goddess? After all, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who engages in such worship is of smaller intelligence. They don't understand the purpose, the real purpose of worship. So why would the Gopis worship some Devi or Deva? For that matter, why would Nanda Maharaj worship Indra? It was not just 1 year, it was an annual event. The understanding of the Gopis is Their only attachment was the personality of Godhead. They had no interest in receiving any benediction other than their fulfilling their relationship with the personality of Godhead, Krishna. Just like we find in Nectar of Devotion, there's 64 items of devotional service that are listed by Rupa Goswami. One of those items of devotional service includes the worship of Ganesh. So when Prabhupada very strongly insisted that we study daily Nectar of Devotion, perhaps Dinabandhu remembers this, we started with Bhagavatam in the morning and Bhagavad Gita in the evening, and at a certain point Prabhupada added a third class every day for all the devotees in the temple, and that was we must study Nectar of Devotion 1 hour every day. How much importance Prabhupada gave to regularly studying his books. He wanted us to be protected by transcendental knowledge from all other kinds of illusion and distractions and other isms that are out there in the world. So when the devotees read, one of the 64 items is that one should worship Ganesh, naturally the question was presented to Srila Prabhupada, why you have not introduced us to the worship of Ganesh? It's given by Rupa Goswami and we're Rupanugas, and why is it in Nectar Devotion but we're not following that item of devotional service? Prabhupada's answer was that the worship of Ganesh is for the removal of obstacles in the course of executing your prescribed duties. Obstacles in achieving the goal in the execution of prescribed duties. Generally, people worship Ganesh because they have material desires, and in the execution of their sacrifices or rituals, they would like to see the material obstacles removed so they can achieve their material results, and that's why they worship Ganesh. So Prabhupada explains similarly, for devotees, because your hearts are presently filled with material desires, I have not encouraged you to worship Ganesh. Instead, I have given you the worship of Lord Nrsingadev, because by the worship of Lord Nrsingadev, very kindly Lord Nrsingadev removes the material desires from your heart, which are the obstacles in achieving the only shelter of the personality of Godhead as our pure condition of heart. So just worship Lord Nrsingadev. Now there is some difference between us and the Gopis. They had no other desire but their loving relationship with the personality of Godhead. And therefore it was perfectly appropriate that they worship Goddess Katyayani. And another perspective altogether is that by worship of Goddess Katyayani, the Gopis were actually worshipping the internal potency of the Lord, who Goddess Katyayani is an expansion of. Hare Krishna. And so, simultaneously, they were all engaged in this extended vrata, rising very early in the morning, in the coldest month of the year, and taking bath in the cold river Jamuna, early in the morning before the sun rises. Very difficult. Tapa. Engaged at Tapavan. Now Krishna is in the heart of every living being. And Krishna knew very much how strong was the desire of the Gopis to engage in this difficult austerity in the middle of the winter month. Ooh, very cold. But fixing their mind on their loving relationship with Krishna, they had this one desire only. So Krishna chose to fulfill their desire. So, on the final day of that month, he came here to Chir-ghat, where the Gopis had placed their clothes hanging from the tree so that they could go bathing in the river Jamuna. Krishna came just at the right time, so that they were in the water and their clothes were in the tree, and Krishna climbed up in the tree and gathered up all their clothes and called for them to come and receive their clothing. Now, this is very bad for a moralist. And those that do not understand the transcendental nature of Krishna and his loving reciprocation with his devotees find great fault in this particular pastime. But devotees of the Lord find wonderful, loving reciprocation between Krishna and his loving devotees. Listen carefully. When the Gopis saw Krishna sitting in the tree, they immediately started speaking some taunting words, looking at each other very happily and shyly. Some spoke in angry tones, some spoke in pleading tones, but actually their hearts were very pleased that Krishna was giving them this very personal, special attention. So Krishna then said, one by one, you must come forward, and to show your full surrender, you must put your hands over your head in a prayerful position, in a pranam position. Naturally, this meant that they could not use either of their hands to cover the private parts of their body because they were completely naked. Now, this seems so lusty. What is Krishna's wish here? What he was demonstrating is that not only they were giving up the social convention of coming before someone other than their husband in a naked position, but with full surrender of even a most natural instinct for any living being, any human being, any civilized human being, is their natural shyness. The social convention, their own personal shyness, Krishna was asking them, surrender that also. And the Gopis looked at each other, one by one. Exactly. Saying, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. finally one of the gopis came forward, just as Krishna has indicated, and reached up and received her clothing from Krishna. And then the next gopi, and then the next gopi, and then the next gopi. Because Krishna knew, the Vedic culture, that no one can be seen, a woman cannot be seen naked before anyone other than her husband. And he knew that the gopis had each been desiring that Krishna shall be my husband. So one by one, Krishna confirmed their desire that he was now in that position as a husband unto each of them. Then, after they received their clothes, they put their clothes on the banks of the river Jamuna, and shyly, now with full clothing, stood before Krishna, waiting for the next chapter of this exciting episode of Krishna's reciprocation with each of them. In his very special, charming way, Krishna spoke very, very pleasantly with each of the gopis, and then indicated to them that I know that you have, each one of you have had this desire, and very soon the arrangement will be made where I will become your husband. And hearing this, the words of, that's the perfection of their heart's desire, the gopis, now radiant with happiness, each returned to their homes, having fulfilled their month-long Katyayani Vrata here at Chir-ghat. Now there's another place near Vrndavan town where a similar pastime took place, but it's a different pastime in a different location. When the gopis had engaged in rasa dance with Krishna, and at the end of the rasa dance, to relieve themselves from the heats of the all-night long dancing, they similarly placed their clothes and went to bathe in the river Jamuna, and Krishna engaged in a similar pastime there. Very near to this location is where the Brahma Vimohan Lila took place, where Krishna fulfilled the desires of the gopis that he would become their husband. As you know, the Brahma Vimohan Lila was where Lord Brahma, after the Aghasura demon was killed, Lord Brahma had observed the killing of the Aghasura demon. And he was simply amazed to see the mystic powers that Krishna had exhibited. And he was thinking, he was simply amazed to see the mystic opulence of Krishna, and so he very much desired to understand what is the limit. Is there a limit of Krishna's transcendental potencies? Ashish, you're going to translate, or I'm going too fast? You'll do it later. As you wish. If it helps, you can do the same. Later or simultaneous is okay. Very good. cues when I hear the voices stop, then I resume. So, okay, now pay attention over here. So quickly, in the narration, after the Aghasura demon was killed, the cowherd boys came by the banks of the river Jamuna, very near to here. They sat to have their lunch. Brahma was observing their activities, much like Dinabandhu was describing, in circles and circles and circles of cowherd boys surrounding Krishna. And Brahma decided that he would kidnap or steal the calves, place the calves in caves. Then Krishna and the cowherd boys saw the calves and the cows, they've disappeared. Krishna said, don't worry, you just continue with the lunch, I'll find them and bring them back. You carry on. So Krishna went away, knowing exactly what had happened, but looking for the cows and the calves. And when Brahma saw that opportunity, he took the cowherd boys, put them similarly in caves, and came back to the scene of the crime, like criminals will sometimes do. And lo and behold, there were all the calves and the cowherd boys. Bewildered. Brahma Vimohan Lila. He went back to the caves and saw the cows and the cowherd boys went back to the river Jamuna. And what did he see? Not only all the cowherd boys, but he saw four-armed forms of Narayan manifesting as each of the calves and each of the cowherd boys. Not just Lord Narayan, and as many as there were calves and cowherd boys, but each surrounded by the personified Vedas and all the demigods singing wonderful prayers in glorification of the personality of Godhead. Then again he saw all the cowherd boys and the personality of Godhead, and then all of a sudden they all disappeared. And instead he only saw Krishna with his left hand holding the same yogurt and fruit as when Krishna had left the whole assembly of the calves and cowherd boys. Looking at Brahma with unblinking eyes. Brahma was completely astonished. He realized from this exhibition of personality of Godhead's manifesting all these different features, this is not just a small cowherd boy, this is my worshipable Supreme Lord. And offered beautiful, beautiful prayers, fantastic prayers. The prayers of Lord Brahma to Krishna is the very last chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada gave his Bhaktivedanta purports to. Sometime when you want your hairs to stand on end and your mouth to hang open and just be amazed at the brilliance of Prabhupada's transcendental purports in the emaciated condition of his body, how transcendental was his consciousness. Read those purports. Look at the video of your ever-well-wisher. See Prabhupada's physical condition. Read those purports. And then you can understand what an inconceivable spiritual master, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has given himself completely to the whole world to give Krishna in transcendental way. Just unbelievable. In not human, superhuman, transcendental, all the way. Beautiful, beautiful prayers of Lord Brahma. When Brahma was completing his prayers, Krishna spoke nothing. One might expect he would speak something. thank you for such nice prayers. Or I forgive you, or it's alright Brahma, just don't do it again, or something. Krishna spoke nothing. And our Acharyas explained, he was anxious for Brahma to hurry up and finish up because he wanted to go sit with the cowherd boys and finish lunch with them. Because being with the cowherd boys in Braja means more to Krishna than the highest of the prayers of the personified Vedas or Lord Brahma himself. Just to be in the company of the cowherd boys on the banks of the river Jamuna having lunch together after killing the Aghasura demon. Krishna Balaram ki jai. When Krishna came back, the cowherd boys said, "Oh Krishna, you're so attached to us, you can't bear being separated from us for even a moment. Sit down and finish your lunch. Hurry up." Because when the cows and the calves were placed in the caves, and Brahma went to go back and look for them, and found them, they were still there, and came back to the place where he had kidnapped them, and they were still there. During that passage of time, which was just a short lapse of moments of Brahma's time, here on earth 1 year had passed. And during that 1 year that had passed, all the Gopas, the cowherd boyfriends of Krishna, they were Krishna. They weren't cowherd boyfriends of Krishna, they were Krishna. In such likeness of each of the cowherd boys, that even the mothers couldn't detect any difference between their sons and Krishna. At least they couldn't detect any difference in features, or in their voice, or their personality. But there was some difference in their affection, because the mothers ordinarily would have more love for Krishna than they would have for their own sons. But now they were finding that they had such affection for their sons as they had for Krishna. And they were astonished. And the calves were Krishna. And the cows, having natural vatsalya, affection, parental-like affection, desiring to have a calf, and affection for Krishna like they have for their own calf, Krishna fulfilled their desire. He became their calf for 1 year. One day during this whole year, what happened was, by Yoga Maya potency, the cowherd boys that were in the caves, the real cowherd boys that were in the caves and the calves, covered by Yoga Maya, were not understanding that a whole year had passed. So when they came out of their cave, Krishna arranged for them to be waiting for him and saying, "You're so attached to us, you can't stand to be away from us for even a moment." Just a moment had passed. But 1 year had passed in Braja, where one day when the cows were up on top of the hill of Govardhan, being taken care of by the cowherd men, and the calves passed by, along with the cowherd boys that were actually Krishna, and the calves that were actually Krishna. The cows up on Govardhan Hill became overwhelmingly attracted to be with their calves. They came running. Have you seen cows run? What's that?
The tails in the sky.
Oh, the tails go in the sky. But but they don't. It's not like horses. They don't know how to gallop. It's very funny to watch. But they run. They can sometimes run. And they were running down the hill to be with their calves, to be with Krishna. And the cowherd men were with their sticks, chasing after the cows, shouting, "Stop, stop!" And they were very angry. But by the time the calves were approached by the cows and were taking milk from the milk bags of the cows, the cowherd men came upon the scene where literally everyone present was Krishna. Krishna, and Krishna as the cowherd boys and Krishna as the calves, all of their anger was completely gone. And they were fully satisfied. Because Krishna was being fully satisfied in his reciprocating with the loving desires of his devotees. And they embraced their sons, who were Krishna, and the whole problem was forgotten. Now, during that 1 year, clever Krishna made a suggestion to Nanda Maharaj. The suggestion was, I believe that there's a very auspicious time. I think that all the cowherd boys should be married to each of the cowherd girls, because that arrangement was there. When boys and girls were very young, they would be married. Although not live together, they would know who their husbands would be when they would become mature and really understand what marriage is. So Nanda Maharaj, much like Krishna's suggestion to worship Govardhan Hill, Nanda Maharaj, having no desire other than pleasing Krishna, said, "This is a wonderful idea. Let us check with Purnamasi." And Purnamasi could appreciate, what a fantastic idea, because she's made the arrangement. This is Krishna's Leela, and she's the internal potency of Krishna, Yogamaya potency of Krishna personified. So a big marriage was held, where all the Gopis were married to all the Gopas. But all the Gopas were Krishna. So Krishna married all the Gopis, fulfilling their desire at Katyayani Vrata. Haribo! So Krishna actually married all the Gopis when they were young girls. And when that 1 year passed, those manifestations of Krishna as each of the cowherd boys was withdrawn, each of the cowherd boys were taken from the cave, the Yogamaya potency removed, and now they're sitting enjoying lunch with Krishna on the bank of the river Jamuna. Krishna fulfilled the desire of the Gopis who had undergone this wonderful vrata here at Chir-ghat. Beautiful, beautiful pastime, orchestrated just for the fulfillment of the desire of the young Gopis to have Krishna as their husband, for the cows to have Krishna as their calf, for the cowherd women to have Krishna as their son, for the cowherd men to have Krishna as their son. Beautiful pastime. Beautiful pastime. And this desire to have Krishna as one's husband, Krishna wants to see, just like the song that Ashish chose to sing, Manasa Deha Geha, I think you chose that deliberately. When one surrenders to Krishna, it's unconditional. In the purified stage of the mood of the residents of Braja, social convention doesn't matter. Personal shyness and humility, but in a material sense, doesn't matter. nothing matters but the satisfaction of the desire of Krishna. That's the lesson. This is the level of devotion and love that the Gopis had for Krishna. Such exalted love cannot be found anywhere in this world. Now one other, I'm going to invite Dinabandhu to embellish and add to what I've described, but one other place of Krishna's pastime, very nearby, just down the river Jamuna, is the place where Nanda Maharaj was being swallowed by the serpent. Huh? Ah, that's right. He bathed too early in the river Jamuna. It was a Dwadasi morning after an Ekadasi fast, and Nanda Maharaj we're all to observe the breaking of Ekadasi on the Dwadasi day at a particular time, and his practice was he would take bath in the river Jamuna at that particular juncture of time, and that was one of the ways that he would use for observing breaking of the fast. One of the servants of Varuna, our acharyas describe, actually Nanda made the right calculation, the servant made the wrong calculation. He didn't bathe at the wrong time. He bathed at the correct time. The servant thought, this is the wrong time, how dare you, whoever you think you are, Nanda Maharaj. And he kidnapped Nanda Maharaj and took him to the abode of Varuna. And there were others watching on the side of the river Jamuna and saw the whole thing happening, and they reported this to Krishna. So Krishna and Balaram both dove into the river Jamuna and went to the abode of Varuna to retrieve Nanda Maharaj. When Krishna and Balaram became before Varuna, Varuna was so happy. He was very apologetic. My servant has made this terrible mistake, and because he was acting on my behalf, it's my mistake. And please forgive me. And he worshipped Krishna and Balaram right before Nanda Maharaj, who was sitting by the side of Varuna with folded hands, worshipping the personality of Godhead, Krishna and Balaram. But Nanda Maharaj was understanding, these are my sons, this is the personality of Godhead. To listen to the prayers and so much respect, so much opulence. This most opulent Varuna is worshipping my son and Balaram. So Varuna very happily turned Nanda Maharaj over to Krishna and Balaram, who came back to Vraja. And when Nanda Maharaj began reporting this to the elders at Nandagram, they were very surprised. And they began speculating. Devotees aren't supposed to speculate. But they began speculating in a different way than we speculate. Who is Krishna really? Is he a great demigod? Is he a great yogi? Maybe, who knows? Who is Krishna? We have heard from Gargamuni that he would have powers like that of Lord Narayan, maybe some special empowered personality. We must take great care, whoever he is. Now, one last narration is at that place where Nanda was kidnapped by the representative of Varuna. there's a very, related to Lord Chaitanya's followers, a very important event that took place, or connected to that place, a Gaudiya Vaishnava lesson for all of us. Those of you that have looked carefully at Sri Brahma Samhita will recall that there's one place where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whose commentary is what we read in English, Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary in English is based upon Jiva Goswami's commentary in Sanskrit. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that Jiva Goswami Pad, our great acharya amongst the 6 Goswamis, has written something that actually he doesn't believe in. And we should understand what he really believes in. What he's making reference to is what I'm about to describe. During the time of Rupa Goswami's writing of Nectar of Devotion in Vrndavan, downstream in the river Jamuna, Vallabhacharya came to visit, and Rupa Goswami, recognizing the scholarship of Vallabhacharya, requested Vallabhacharya to assist in looking over the text to see if he had some corrections, some modifications that he thought would enhance Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And Vallabhacharya agreed to that invitation of Rupa Goswami. When we do our Govardhan Parikrama, we'll go to a second. The Vallabhacharya followers had their place here in Vrndavan also. So they were contemporaries. So Vallabhacharya was reading the commentary of Rupa Goswami on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and his texts. And he came across one particular passage that he brought to Rupa Goswami's attention. The passage is where bhukti and mukti are compared to 2 witches. That when witches act upon a living entity, they spook a living entity because they're scary. Witches are scary. So his comment to Rupa Goswami is, maybe that language is a little strong. You might want to consider using a different metaphor than a witch. Rupa Goswami thanked Vallabhacharya. But when this news came to Jiva Goswami that Vallabhacharya is questioning the language of Sri Rupa Goswami, he challenged him and soundly defeated him on scriptural authority that this was an actual appropriate. He gave scriptural references where such a thing is actually said, the very example from scripture, and why it is so. Vallabhacharya said, I'm convinced it's an appropriate example. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Then Rupa Goswami, who's the uncle of Jiva Goswami, called Jiva Goswami to see him. Said, why have you done like this? I asked some service of Vallabhacharya. In the mood of service, he's done some very, very nice service. And now here you're having this argument with him. This is not good. Because a Vaishnava should always be very humble. And so, without the proper humility, you cannot stay in my association, you must leave. Now, about that historical event, our Gaudiya Vaishnavas have a very clear understanding, and that is the principle that as a disciple of Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami was upholding his honor. To others, they were thinking Jiva Goswami, confirmed by his spiritual master, does not have sufficient humility, so proud of his scholarship. But Jiva Goswami's mood was not pride in scholarship, it was strongly upholding the reputation and good name of his spiritual master. So, with great unhappiness in his heart, having displeased Rupa Goswami, he came to that place where the pastime of Nanda Maharaj being kidnapped took place, and he made a residence in a cave that was an abandoned alligator's home, and lived there in solitude. While he was living there, he composed one book named Gopal Champu. This Gopal Champu is presently available. In that Gopal Champu, he wrote something that in Vrndavan at the time, there was a controversy. You know how there are controversies in Vaishnavism sometimes. From time to time. There was some controversy some time back about the origin of the jiva that created a big hoopla. And so at the time, there was a controversy about vipralambha bhav, about conjugal love in marriage and conjugal love outside of marriage. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya and that of the Goswamis was conjugal love outside of marriage. This relationship of Radha and the Gopis with Krishna was the highest form of love. And there were others who lived in Braja who felt otherwise. So, in Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami wrote a very, very beautiful narration in which Krishna and Radha were married. We did not visit Pinipokar when we were at Varsana. We didn't have time. But a very wonderful pastime where Radha was going every day to cook for Krishna, and when she was cooking for Krishna, each day Mother Jasoda got the brilliant idea that wouldn't it be so wonderful if Radha and Krishna were married. So in fun, she put turmeric marks on the hand of Radharani as an engagement kind of gesture. In fun. And Radha, when she was returning back to Varsana, she thought, what will my mother and father think by seeing this yellow marks on my hand, turmeric marks? So she washed them off in this pond, and it made a yellowish color, thus Pili Pokar. But others had seen this, and they reported it to Vrishabhanu and Kirtida, who thought it was a very wonderful proposal. And they sent back a messenger with jewels as a form of formal acknowledgement to the proposal that Radha and Krishna be married. There's details, more details, but Purnamasi put a stop to it. Before it was finalized, Purnamasi would have to be consulted. She was very discouraging. This is not a good idea. this is not a good year, that these astrological charts don't look good at all right now, the marriage will never work. Let them marry at another time, perhaps. She put a stop to it. But her reason is because it would completely spoil the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna outside of the sanctity of marriage. So the Gaudiya Vaishnavas held that the love of Radha and Krishna is completely pure, but its charm was enhanced by marriage, or by a conjugal relation outside of marriage. But there were other persons in Braja at the time who held strongly a different view. This was not right. So in Gopal Champu, there's a Leela that comes from Adi Varaha Purana and Garga Samhita, where Krishna and Radha are married when they're very small. And in that Leela, in Gopal Champu, it describes, we will not go this year, but we've gone in previous years to Vrndavan, where, Vrndavan, where Nanda Maharaj and Krishna are heading into the forest because some cows did not return that particular day. So they're going to find the cows, because they're protectors of the cows. But as they were entering into the forest, a big storm came. So now Nanda Maharaj is in a dilemma. We all know what it's like to be in a dilemma in devotional service. You have two things that you have to do, and they're mutually exclusive. You can do one and neglect the other, or vice versa, but to do both, how can you do both? Because they both must be done at once. There's a storm coming, Krishna needs to be protected. There's cows in the forest, the cows need to be protected. So in this dilemma, little Radharani appeared. And Nanda Maharaj thought, Radharani is very sober, Radharani is a little older, is very responsible. If Radharani and Krishna go back together to Vrindavan, to their home, everything will be nice. So he sent them back. You go quickly back to my palace, and I'll continue to find the cows. So as they were happily going towards Nanda Maharaj's palace, they assumed their Kishore form. Lord Brahma came, and various demigods came, and a wedding ceremony was performed by Lord Brahma under a big tree, which has a particular name? Mandirvat. So in Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami writes, Radha and Krishna were formally married by Lord Brahma. Can't do better than that. And big ceremony. All the demigods came. And after the ceremony was completed, Krishna and Radha assumed their childish form again. The demigods returned to their respective abodes, and Krishna and Radha returned to their homes. Now back to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary. He expresses that this, which it's only a little reference, and now I'm explaining the reference. So next time you read Brahma Samhita, you will find the little reference is there. Goswami has written where love in marriage is the highest, but actually we understand that Jiva Goswami really does not deviate from the teachings of Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. Rather, this love and separation, or love outside of marriage, parakiya bhav, is the topmost form of loving expression in conjugal love. Now this book was written by Jiva Goswami just down the way, in that alligator cave. One description has it that he became, so what he was doing was wanting to show Rupa Goswami that he could act supportive of persons who would even contradict Rupa Goswami and do it in a graceful manner. But it hurt him so much, he threw the whole book in Jamuna River. And downstream where Sanatana Goswami was bathing, he saw floating by a whole book written in the handwriting of Jiva Goswami, because his handwriting was remarkably, like we find in Chaitanya Charitamrita, like strings of pearls. So he rescued the book, and then he knew Jiva Goswami, who's been absent for months, must be somewhere upstream, and so he searched and searched and searched and searched, and he found Jiva Goswami. And he was so happy to see him, but his condition was emaciated. He had been fasting and was just in disturbed, unhappy state of mind, feeling that he's offended Rupa Goswami, his spiritual master. The conclusion of this description is, Sanatana Goswami, as the elder brother of Rupa Goswami, knew how to bring a conclusion to this. So he came to Rupa Goswami's Bhajan Kutir and said, my dear Rupa, according to the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what is the most outstanding quality of a Vaishnava? And right away Rupa Goswami answered, Jivadaya, compassion upon all living beings. And Sanatana Goswami smiled, very well, and I have one very repentant jiva right behind me who is seeking your daya. Please be compassionate upon him, forgive him, and allow him to be again in your company and in your service. The pastimes of Krishna and the pastimes of the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are intimately woven into the fabric of Vrndavan. And just here, in this area of Vrndavan, such wonderful pastimes have been enacted. So I'm going to ask Dina Bandhu to speak some additional things and conclusions of where we're visiting now.
I think Maharaj has covered everything way farther than I can imagine. And I have to get back to, tonight I have to go to Radhakund. Anyway, one of the amazing things about this place is all along the way we've seen a lot of kadamba trees. And all of these kadamba trees have their leaves going up. But you see this kadamba tree, all his leaves are hanging down, just like saris hanging in the tree. I've never seen a kadamba tree like this. This is a very, very special kadamba tree. You see all they're hanging down. Everywhere else we saw they're up, but all these are hanging down, like saris hanging in the tree. So this is a very special place. Interesting point is about Lord Brahma. because tomorrow you're going to Govardhan where Indra made an offense. But in Indra's offense, all the Brishvasis came under the hill of Govardhan with Krishna. Indra's offense caused all the Brishvasis to come close to Krishna. Whereas Brahma's offense, he took all the cowherd boys away from Krishna. So he made a really big offense. Indra's offense was less. And the interesting thing about Jiva Goswami and Ballabh, what Ballabh had said was that Rupa, in the very beginning of his book, he says, Bhukti Mukti Spriha Sakale Pisashti. So Jiva Goswami points out that he didn't call Bhukti and Mukti as witches. He said Bhukti Mukti Spriha. Spriha means, do you know? Desire. It's the desire for Bhukti and Mukti that's a witch, not Mukti and Bhukti. It's the desire for those things that's a witch that haunts the devotee. So Ballabh was completely astonished by the scholarship of Jiva. One other thing, one time I came here with my very dear godbrother Madhavisa, and we took our bath here on the Jamuna. And sometimes I've heard how they describe, Radharani's braid just like a swarm of bees. As we were coming out of the Jamuna, we looked up and we saw this funny cloud, and we looked at it, and suddenly we saw it just sort of went like this and into a little tail like that. And we suddenly realized it wasn't a cloud at all, it was a whole swarm of bees. And it's just like, the hair all around the head, then coming down into a little choti like this, a little braid. And we saw this swarm of bees going through the air like that. We saw this. You hear all of the examples in the literature, but you come here to Braj, you can actually see these things before your very eyes. So I know I'm very hungry. I think you're all very hungry. But one more thing. Is that who were all these gopis who were worshipping Katyayani here? I hope all of you, some of you, most of you already took darshan of Katyayani here. But when Lord Ram married Sita in Maithila, every woman in Maithila wanted to be married to Lord Ram. But he had taken Ekapatni Vrat. So he told them within their hearts, he said, don't worry, next avatar. So they all took birth in Bengal as the daughters of one, I think his name was Kumar, I can't remember his name, but Kumar, who was a very, very wealthy aristocrat, merchant. But we know Lakshmi is very fickle, so somehow he became bankrupt. And he had 1 lakh of daughters. All the women of Maithila had taken birth as his daughters. And he went wandering here and there trying to find some employment from his daughters. And somehow they came here to Braj. They saw Nanda Maharaj has lakhs and lakhs of cows. He needs lots of girls to milk those cows. So they became the milk herds, milkmaids, in the palace of Nanda Maharaj. And there they saw Krishna. And they all developed this desire. So advised by Vrindadevi, they came here and performed this special vrat. Here they were worshipping Katyayani, and there in Tapovan, they were performing their tapasya, eating a havisyama, which is khichdi without any salt. Can you imagine if this morning, they brought all the prasad with no salt? For 1 month they were eating like that. These are some of the few little sweet details. In that, I was always wondering, because they have that Chir-ghat in Vrndavan, and even in Brajriti Chintamani, Biswanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that as Chir-ghat. But as Maharaj said, that's another pastime. Actually, what Krishna did in that pastime, he snuck out of the water when the gopis weren't looking, and he switched everybody's cloth around. He put somebody's choli with somebody else's sari and somebody's petticoat with somebody else's choli, and he just switched everything all around in that place. So that's also known as Chir-ghat. But the place that we read about in Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the place. Here's the Katyayani deity is here. The Tapovan is there. This beautiful Kadamba tree with its leaves hanging down like saris is here. This is the place that we read about in Srimad Bhagavatam. So I guess now we can head back to the buses, and we'll go back. And I hopefully the feast is ready. There's a wonderful feast. I know I'm ready. Hare Krishna.
Krishna